Hi everyone, my name is Amy Uy, and I'm going to be presenting on word forms, root, prefixes, and suffixes. This webcast is brought to you by International Services and Programs, ISP, and we are part of College of the Canyons. If you ever need to reach us, our email is listed on the screen here. It's isp@canyons.edu. Before I begin, I would like to ask you a question. Why is it important to study word forms? Well, sometimes you might come across words you don't know the meaning of. But if you break down words and you know the meaning of each part of the word, then you can guess the meaning of the word. By the end of this lesson, I hope that you will be able to identify and distinguish among roots, including prefixes and suffixes, analyze root words and their meaning, identify and analyze complex vocabulary in context. And I'm going to start by introducing, I'm going to start by having a short introduction and then giving an overview of roots, prefixes, and suffixes. We'll have some examples and then we'll do an exercise. Please look at the word below, invisible. It's broken into two parts for you here, in-visible. Can you figure out the meaning based on the parts of this word? The word invisible means unable to be seen by the eye. And as you can see with the picture on the right, there's someone who is invisible. We cannot see their skin or their face, but we know they're there. We know they're dressed in a hat, glasses, and a suit. English words are mostly taken from Greek and Latin roots. It's important to know what these roots mean. And in today's lesson, we'll learn how words are formed, English words are formed. We'll start with base words. A base word is the most basic form of a word that is able to describe something or to carry a meaning. And I have some common base words here on the screen for you. Cook, right, view, agree, happy, hero, quiet, do, legal, dress. Now, can you think of other word forms that contain these common base words? You might have thought of these words: unhappy, illegal, viewing, writer, and disagree. I've underlined the base words in each of these words for you. Happy in unhappy, legal in illegal, view in viewing, right in writer, and agree in disagree. Now let's look at root words. A root word is similar to a base word, but it comes from another language, often Greek or Latin. Root words often need a prefix or a suffix attached to it in order to make sense. Now, a root word, most of the time, cannot stand on their own, and prefixes and suffixes are groups of letters attached to the beginning or the end of a root word. Here are some common root words: homo, aqua, bio, ambi, phobia, cron, auto, and graph. Let's look through these, some of these root words. Chrono means time, and an example is chronological. And when something is in chronological order, then it is an order of something starting with the earliest and then followed by the order of occurrence, whatever we're talking about. So a lot of times it's the order of events. And then there's demos, which means people. And an example is democracy. And democracy is a government by the people or a ruling of the majority of people. Then there's mater or mater, and the definition is mother. An example is matriarchy. Matriarchy is a system of society that is ruled by women. Then we have graph, which means writing, and an example is autobiography. And autobiography is when someone writes a story of their own life. And then there's phobia. The definition is fear, and an example is claustrophobia. That's when someone has a fear of small, tight spaces. And then we have photo, which means light, and an example is photography. And traditionally, photography or photographs were created with light. Now we will review affixes. What are affixes? Affixes are word parts that change the meaning of a root or base word. Suffixes and prefixes are both considered affixes. Now, prefixes a prefix is a letter or group of letters that's usually added to the beginning of a word to make it a new word. So you can see some examples on the left: re, un, and dis. Re means again, un means not, and dis means opposite of. Now these groups of letters cannot stand on their own. They must be attached to a base or root word. And keep in mind that they are added to the beginning of a word. Here are some common prefixes. I've highlighted them in orange for you. Miss in misbehave, centi in centimeter, re in rewrite, dis in disagree, in invisible, sub in submarine, poly in polygon, super in superhero, un in unhappy, pre in preview, and im in impossible. Now, the word prefix is also made up of two parts: pre, which means before, and fix, which means attached. When we put them together, prefixed means attached before. Let's look at some common prefixes. We have anti, which means against, and an example is antidote, antidote. And an antidote is something that fixes an unpleasant situation. You can think of it as against an unpleasant situation. Bi means to, and an example is bi-weekly. And bi-weekly means every 2 weeks or 2 times a week. There's inter, which means between, and an example is international. And that means existing or occurring between at least 2 nations. Then there's mono, which means one, and an example is monologue. A monologue is a long speech by one person. Then there's pre, which means before, and an example is preview, and that's to view something before. And then there's un, which means not or opposite of, and an example is unusual, which means not usual or opposite of usual. Let's look into suffixes. A suffix is a letter or group of letters that's placed at the end of a word or at the end of a root. And usually suffixes change the function of the word and sometimes changes the meaning. So as opposed to a prefix, a suffix is at the end, a prefix is at the beginning. So let's look at 2 examples on the left-hand side. We have full, F-U-L, which means full of, and less, L-E-S-S, which means without. Can you spot the suffixes in these words? Here are the answers. They are highlighted in red font for you. Full in hopeful, F-U-L, right? Ing, I-N-G in singing. L-Y, ly in bravely. E-R, in teacher. M-E-N-T, ment in refreshment. E-S-T, est in strongest. N-E-S-S, ness in fearless. N-E-S-S, ness in kindness. And then L-E-S-S, less in fearless. And then we have O-R, in sailor. Here are some other common suffixes. We have able, which means is or can be, and an example is affordable, able to be afforded or can be afforded. And then there's en, which means made of, and an example is golden. So that could be made of gold or made of the color gold. Suffix er, right, means more. And an example is taller, more tall. And then the next suffix is est, which means the most. And an example is tallest, right, the most tall. We have ful, full, with a definition of full of. And an example is helpful. And helpful means someone or something that's ready to give help, right? And then we have less, less, which means without. And an example is helpless, without help. All right, let's end it by analyzing this word here. Uncooked, it's broken down for you. Can you analyze it? Here is the answer. If you can look at the middle word, we have cook, and that is the base word. And that base word holds the meaning, right? So when we cook something, let's say when we're cooking food, we're putting it over a stove and heating it up until we can eat it. If it is raw and unable to be eaten, if we cook it and put it over heat, then we can eat it. So that's attached to the prefix un, which means not, and the suffix ed. And the suffix ed gives it the grammatical function of being simple past tense and a past participle of the word uncooked. So this word uncooked means not having been cooked. So it is raw. We can't eat it. Thank you so much for listening. We hope to be able to see you at COC, College of the Canyons, one of these days, and we hope to be able to meet you. If you'd like to contact us, our email is isp@canyons.edu. And please take a look at our College of the Canyons website. The website's listed here on the screen for you as well, www.canyons.edu. And please follow us on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, and the handles are all listed on the screen here for you. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.